Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's episode is all about the Hangman card. It goes along with episode 33 of the podcast. There it is right there, the logo. If you haven't checked us out there, please do. We're in season 2 of the podcast. We're making our way through the High Arcana, and we also have interviews with all kinds of prominent pagans. We have just episodes where I talk about all kinds of witchy things. It's really great. There's a Patreon I just started now. If you are already a fan of the podcast and you're in a place where you want to help us out, you can become a subscriber and contribute through the Patreon. If you can't, that's okay. The most important thing, what does the most for us, is hitting the subscribe button, liking, commenting, leaving a review. Do the things, do all the things. So we're talking about the Hangman card today, and I've got a bunch of cards from my decks to share with you. And also, Luna is sleeping beside me. I hope she's not too loud. So hopefully her snoring doesn't get in this video. Okay, let's dive into these tarot decks, shall we? I've got a bunch of cards from my collection to show you. Usually I plan a little bit more ahead. Like I know when I write the podcast episode where I'm going. With this, I didn't. So whatever, let's just go with it, okay? So let's start with the Tarot de Marseille. I often start here, and you know this because this is the most complete deck we have in history, okay? The show notes really breaks down a lot about historical decks. So if you want more information, go to the show notes. They can be found at my website, www.jodiannpsychicmedium.com. So the reason he's upside down, like if you can see him here, this is supposed to be a gallows. That is because traitors were hung by one foot. This is a thing they did in Milan back in like the 1400s. They would hang traitors by one foot. And then they kept them alive. They didn't just like crucify them and let them die. They actually gave them food and water over the number of days that they could sustain being hung up upside down. It was quite a brutal punishment. Loyalty was taken very serious back then. So I always found it so interesting because we have this card depicting a traitorous person. And then when you start moving into the Rider-Waite-Smith deck and you start moving into Golden Dawn and how they perceive things, they change things. Let me grab my Golden Dawn deck. Okay, so the Golden Dawn, okay, there we go. I had to switch sides because of the lighting in here. Can you see the Golden Dawn deck? There we go. There we go. Okay. Sorry, I had to play with the light to get that right. So the Golden Dawn deck, what you see in it is instead of having this idea of suffering that we have in the Tarot de Marseille, we have this different idea. We have this halo of enlightenment. So we start having these ideas shift into the meaning of the card, where it's more about sacrifice. It's more about suffering in order to find enlightenment. Okay, so we still have them hung upside down. And when you dive into this, if you like do some Googling, you're going to find all kinds of ways that scholars relate the triangle of the feet that's created in this card to mean all kinds of things. They relate it to the alchemical symbols for salt and the alchemical symbols for I think transformation. They also attribute it to the symbols for the elements, right? Because when we look at traditional witchcraft, we've got the triangles that symbolize water and fire. So there's all kinds of ideas that go around the symbolism of that triangle made by his feet. And I find it really interesting that because Christianity, I mean, it is the backbone of a lot of our culture. Through so many hundreds of years, it was the most practiced religion. Judeo-Christian style ideas on suffering and martyrdom have made our way into the tarot cards. And I think it's so neat. And I know that I'm a witch and I know that I'm a pagan, but if I really want to look at the meanings behind these cards and I want to study them, I have to do it with an open mind. And I have to look at the fact that Christianity is the dominant religion in the UK and in Britain and all the different countries that had the neo-pagan movements in them. And I want to show you a card from my collection that really shows that. So this is from the Mythic Tarot. And what's really neat is most of the cards in that deck are all about Greek mythology. It's full of Jason and the Golden Fleece. It's full of Hercules, and it has gorgons and all kinds of things. But the Hangman card, can you see that? Is it clear? Yes. The Hangman card in that deck looks so much like a suffering Jesus on a cross, doesn't it? His arms are splayed out like a crucifix in the bottom. You have him looking so much like the scholars paint that very blue-eyed, blonde Jesus, even though he would be Jewish and probably have dark hair. Anyway, so I just find it so neat. And you have that eagle, right, flying overhead. It's really interesting to me the way the artwork changes and how this card that at first was a real warning about traitorous acts has come in to mean martyrdom and suffering and yeah, just the way the artwork changes. Now, I'm going to pause for a minute before I look at my more contemporary decks. I'm going to tell you how I read this card in a reading. For me, when I'm looking at a spread with the Hangman card, it's one of those cards that talks about things being beyond our control, right? Like, we can't push through this. We can't just like muscle through something and power through something. It often talks about how we do need to go to that bigger perspective, that enlightened perspective in order to get through a problem, because we're in a situation that is outside of our control, a situation where we really feel like we're just smashing our head against a wall and not getting anywhere. And so we have to be able to take a step back and change our perspective and look at this whole situation that's driving us crazy from a higher perspective, a higher mindset. I don't think it means that we must suffer for enlightenment, but I do think it means we need to stop forcing and pushing against an unmovable obstacle so that we can gain perspective. We definitely are suspended when we're in the hangman state, and we're definitely feeling vulnerable, and we're feeling like we have lost our power in a situation. And the key is going to be in the cards surrounding it, right? As readers, this is a card that really tells us where our client's at. And it's one of the cards we need to, as readers, look at with deep compassion and look to, where does our client feel frustrated? Where does our client feel like they are at their wit's end? And look at the other cards around it, surrounding this card, so that we can give them really sage wisdom. Okay, does that make sense? I hope so. Now let's look at some more cards that kind of take a twist where the art is really fun. So one of the decks I love, and I've been playing with is the Deviant Moon Tarot. So I wanted to kind of look at the artwork of the Hangman for that. Let me grab that card. And can you see that? Can you see that really good? Okay, I do have my light really bright today. Sorry, guys, I'm trying a new camera setup. Anyway, so have a look at this. So the expression on this hangman's face is one of someone who seems to know a secret, and dangling from his foot is that watch. So again, we're talking about a situation that we just got to kind of wait out. We have to take our time in. We have to look at in a new way, and it will unfold whenever it's ready to unfold. We are suspended. There's nothing we can do to force this situation. And like all the hangmans, he has that look of acceptance. And that's, for me, the key to this card. Let's go to another one. So this one we have from the Wild Unknown Tarot. And she's chosen to depict a bat. And I love this because when you think about a bat, right? Like when you think about a person, being upside down is not normal for us, right? It's a weird thing. But when you think about a bat, being upside down is normal. This is the normal state of a bat. So it brings to mind the idea that whatever you're going through, you are in a natural process. No matter how weird it feels, no matter how uncomfortable you feel, you are in a natural process of learning. That you're supposed to be where you are. It's uncomfortable, but you are where you're supposed to be. I like how dark it is up at the top. I think it talks about the idea of looking at shadow work, right? Looking at the darkness and the light in the situation. Where's your character defect showing up? Where are you not being open-minded? Things like that. When we're looking at the Hangman card, and even like when we're looking at a lot of the cards in the second half of the High Arcana, anything past the first 7 cards, we're dealing with really complex archetypal energy. So we want to look at the cards around this card to give keys to its understanding. Okay, one more card. Okay. Yeah, I've really been struggling with my light this time. I'm sorry, guys. So this one is from the As Above, So Below deck. I think it's really fun. This is the So Below, and it really takes all these really high concepts and these really like heady concepts, and it brings them back down to earth. So in this one, someone in a yogi headstand. And I really like this because when you are a student of yoga, you know we do headstands for a reason, right? We want to upset the blood flow. Upset's the wrong word. We want to change the blood flow. We want to take pressure off of the organs. So we have that whole idea of changing our perspective, changing things, moving things, and looking at things from another higher perspective. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. It's really just looking at some of the art and just like sharing my decks with you, which I love to do. If you want more kind of teaching about this card, I do have a whole podcast episode on it as well as show notes. So you can find the podcast again at the Witching Half Hour or so. We are in the second season of the podcast, and we are slowly making our way through the High Arcana along with all the other things I share. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you like the content, please smash that subscribe button, leave a comment, do all the things. You know what I'm going to ask you to do. Do the things. Okay? And I'll see you soon. Bye, babes.